Testing, 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 testing. Test 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me? You want me to just keep talking? Hello? Testing. Maybe move it closer. Test, test, test. Good? Okay. All right.
There's a cord over here that looks like it goes up to the mug. It's plugged in. And I don't know what this is.
Oh, I'm sorry, the mics aren't working. What's that? Oh, right.
IT, but he sent the message to the IT. Ask him to come down.
So I'll introduce you, hand you off the slider.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry if you can hear me. The Lincoln Auditorium mics aren't working today for some reason. So, am I loud enough for everyone? No? I'll try and speak a little bit louder. Yeah, there's seats up here too as well. Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Wyman. I'm the Communications Director for the Idaho Freedom Foundation. I want to welcome everyone to our inaugural Capital Clarity this year. For those who may not be aware, Capital Clarity was started a number of years by Janice McGeechan and then Representative Dorothy Moon. It was to provide Idahoans insight into the political process. Today's Capital Clarity is important because it's on something not just every Idahoan, but every American should be aware of: their constitutional rights. In the past 4 years, many of these rights have come under attack. Starting with COVID, there was a heavy push to suppress freedom of speech through big tech censorship, freedom of religion through the forced closing of our churches, our right to bear arms to protect ourselves from tyranny, and a unique one, our health freedom. Unfortunately, the vaccine mandates caused immeasurable harm to many. They harmed families and left many people without jobs. But the good news is that there are people who are fighting to protect your rights, like today's speaker, Brian Festa. Brian Festa is a civil rights attorney who founded We the Patriots USA to preserve and reclaim our God-given inalienable rights. Brian became involved in health freedom activism and legal work several years ago after his son was seriously injured by a flu shot. His work includes providing pro bono legal representation for those whose civil liberties are being violated. Brian has been featured on shows like The Glenn Beck Show, The Stu Peters Show, and Steve Bannon's War Room. Please welcome Brian Festa.
Thanks, Jake. I don't think anyone have a problem hearing me. I've never been told that someone can't hear me, ever. All right? So if you can't, just move a little closer. I'm sure you'll be fine. I want to thank Jake, Ron, Idaho Freedom Foundation for inviting me here to speak today and allowing me to tell you a little bit about our organization. I see some familiar faces, so I think there are a few people here that already know about us, but we've been headquartered in Idaho since 2022, so not that long. I moved here not from California. Don't make assumptions here. I heard you were from California, so but I moved here from Connecticut, believe it or not. So you don't see many transplants from the Northeast out here, but I'm one of the few, and Dawn is as well. Actually, she's a New Yorker. So again, don't hold that against her. But there's a reason we left those places, right? There's a reason we're here now, and it's not because we want to make Idaho like New York or Connecticut, which is basically California East, right? No, it's because we want to live somewhere like Idaho that is vastly different from those places, and the differences I've noted in just the last couple of years have been stark. So again, I want to thank the Idaho Freedom Foundation. If you didn't get a chance to pick up our materials, we have some folders there on the back table, and we also I also noted that the legislative guide IFF puts out every year does a beautiful job with that. In fact, I use that every year myself, looking at the different bills that are coming up and different policies that are working their way through the legislature. So thank you very much for that. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. We the Patriots USA, if you don't know too much about us, I don't have to turn around. I've got a screen right there. I'll get the hang of it. We are a public interest law firm. So we are a nonprofit charitable organization, 501c3 organization. We are nonprofit. We provide all of our work pro bono. All right. So we don't charge a penny if we take a case for you. It's completely free. Now, obviously, litigation is very expensive. I'll talk about later how do we pay for that. We are headquartered, as I said, here in Caldwell, in the Treasure Valley, I should say. And our focus areas aren't limited to what you see up there, but they include things like religious freedom, health freedom, free speech cases, parental rights, and also even Second Amendment rights. We are not a political organization, so pay no attention to the picture there on your right. That is our co-founder, my good friend, the president, Dawn Jolly. She was one of only 5 people that was invited. See, I knew I was going to do that. I'm just gonna get down here so I get out of the way because I'm a walker when I talk. She was one of only 5 people that was invited to meet with President Trump in August at his club in Bedminster, New Jersey. She flew from Idaho out there in August, met with him, and spent some time at the club there to discuss specifically health freedom issues and more specifically vaccine mandates. He wanted to know about this. This was exactly 1 week to the day before he announced that Bobby Kennedy Jr. was going to be joining his campaign and abandoning his campaign and joining the Trump campaign. So ahead of that announcement, he wanted to get a feel from people who had been at the forefront of the health freedom movement. And Dawn, again, was one of only 5 people that was invited to meet with him. So just because we're a non-political organization does not mean that we won't meet with politicians, right? We'll meet with anyone. We'll meet with, well, for some reason, Biden and Harris never invited us to meet with them, but we would sit down at the table anyway and meet with anyone. So we're nonpartisan, but I think it's important that we have these kinds of dialogues with people, right? Even if they don't agree with us, so that they can understand. And who knows, maybe you change a heart, change a mind. I'm not going to get into my whole life story here. Some of you already know it. As Jake said, I got involved in health freedom activism long before I ever had an organization. Dawn and I have had 2 organizations together, the Connecticut Freedom Alliance, which was a legislative lobbying organization. Dawn was a registered lobbyist in Connecticut, working for the people, not for a pharma. She was an executive at Pfizer at one point in her career years ago and worked directly under Albert Bourla, who at the time was not, I will just say, was not the same person that he has become. And obviously, this was long before COVID was on anyone's lips. So, she has pharmaceutical industry insider knowledge that I believe is unrivaled in the health freedom movement. So that's why it was so important for me to partner with her when I did decide that I wanted to form an organization. I became involved, though, in this activism when my son was very seriously injured by a flu shot. So again, this was years before, we're talking 2012, long before COVID was even a thing. And, unfortunately, he has permanent and lifelong disabilities as a result of that. And so that sent me down the rabbit hole, my wife and I researching vaccines, things like aborted fetal cell tissue being used in the production, the manufacture of vaccines, and the rest is history. I've worked closely with other organizations like Bobby Kennedy's Children's Health Defense. I know Bobby personally. He's come out when we were in Connecticut and come to rallies and spoken at our events. It's been a wild ride. It's hard to believe that it's even been this long. But, he mentioned, Jake, at the beginning that it's been 4 years. It's actually been almost 5 years since COVID started. Believe it or not, that was March of 2020. We're in 2025 now. Everybody keeps saying the last 4 years because we said that all year last year, but it's actually 5 years now that we've been dealing with this stuff. And it's not over, folks, by the way. It's not over by a long shot. We do a lot more than just health freedom work, but I want to talk today a little bit about why lawsuits are so important. Because obviously, it's kind of ironic. I'm saying that in the state capitol building, which houses both the executive, some of the executive branch, and the legislative branch, of course, of the state branches of government. But the judiciary, I call the judiciary the last battleground state, because even if we have the presidency in favor of freedom, even if we have Congress in favor of freedom, all right, that's not to say, again, we're nonpartisan, it's not to say just because Republicans are in control that all of them are doing the right thing for freedom, because that would certainly not be a correct statement. But even if we have those 2 branches locked up, we still need the courts. The courts are vital. The courts are supposed to be a check and balance on those other branches. The courts, ultimately, the way our system of government is set up, certainly at the federal level, but even at the state level, is that the courts get the final say. So this is why we need to start focusing our efforts, to the extent that we haven't done it enough, we need to start focusing our efforts on lawsuits, on litigation. Because again, you can win, with executive orders, you can win with great bills, laws being passed, but at the end of the day, if a judge bangs that gavel and says, no, that law gets stricken down, or that executive order gets stricken down. We need to be able to fight that. And Attorney General Labrador has done a great job fighting a lot of the bad things and trying to uphold the good things. But he can't do it on his own either. And we're a nationwide organization. We do have litigation in Idaho, but we do lawsuits all over the country, from New York to California. Let me talk about that. Speaking of California, Mirella Ramirez was a kindergarten teacher in Oakland, California, who reached out to us not too long ago and said, listen, I'm being fired because my supervisors are trying to force me, the school administrators at my school are trying to force me to use preferred pronouns in the classroom to refer to a 5-year-old girl as a boy, because this 5-year-old is transitioning. Now, we all know, I assume most people in this room believe, as I do, that a 5-year-old girl cannot become a 5-year-old boy, or vice versa. Mirella strongly believes, because of her devout faith, she's a Catholic, and she talked to me at length about her faith. Her strong religious beliefs are that God creates you how he creates you, and there's no changing that. All right? And she told her supervisors that, no, I'm not going to do it. And they wouldn't offer an accommodation that wouldn't violate her religious beliefs. At one point, they did try to remove the student from her classroom, but that's not a reasonable accommodation either. They actually dragged the child, literally kicking and screaming, from the classroom. The child didn't want to leave all of her friends and loved her teacher, but was being told, no, since this teacher is not going to refer to you as a boy, I have to move you. And I wasn't there when this happened, obviously, but my guess is the child really wouldn't have cared if Mirella had continued to refer to her by her given name. You usually see that kind of indignation and that kind of resolve come from, maybe middle schoolers, teenagers, high schoolers, who really believe that they want a gender transition and get very offended by being called the wrong name. A 5-year-old, that's not likely to happen. That's just my experience with 5-year-olds. I do have a couple of children, so. But children, as you know, I was on the Steve Day show the other day, on Tuesday, and he said, this child probably likes the taste of paste. He said, it's not, 5-year-olds don't know what they want. One day they want to be, a dog or a unicorn or something else. Then I want to be a boy. I want to be a girl. I mean, this is what it is to be 5, right? If we can remember that far back. I can't really, but, certainly this wasn't a thing when I was growing up, but it's a thing that we're dealing with now, right? Well, this is a violation of the First Amendment, not only the free speech clause of the First Amendment, because they're compelling Mirella. This is a government actor, a state actor, right, that is compelling Mirella Ramirez to use these preferred pronouns. But it's also obviously a free exercise of religion violation, because it's her religious freedom at stake. And I contend that it's an Establishment Clause violation. The Establishment Clause prohibits the government from imposing a state-sponsored religion upon a person or in a school, in a government entity. And that's exactly what they're doing, because her religious beliefs are the Christian religious beliefs, which are directly opposed to the beliefs they're trying to institute in the classroom. The belief, in other words, that they're asking all the children and the staff, the teachers, to acknowledge and affirm that a boy can become a girl and a girl can become a boy. That's a set of religious beliefs, folks. And they are imposing that on every person in that school. They're not allowed to do that. So we joined forces. Our local counsel is Harmeet Dillon's law firm. She's also been nominated recently, as has Mr. Kennedy, for a position in the Trump cabinet. You may have heard that. But we're working closely with her because she is located right in that area. So, I'm not licensed in California, so we take the lead as lead counsel. And then we partner with local councils throughout the country is how this works. Because obviously the attorneys we have, we're not large enough yet that we have attorneys licensed in every single state. So you don't have to be licensed a lot of people don't realize this, you don't have to be licensed in a state as an attorney to file a lawsuit there, to bring a case there. You just have to find an attorney who is licensed who will partner with you and basically sign off on the paper. So it's called pro hoc vice admission. And so that's what she's doing for us. She's, reviewing things, signing off on things. Her firm is anyway, not her personally, but her firm is. So we're very grateful to her as well. That's one of our most recent lawsuits, getting a lot of attention. Actually, Riley Gaines just tweeted about it about a week ago, and Libs of TikTok even picked it up. So we're getting a lot of traction with this one. Speaking of TikTok, I keep doing these perfect segues, and I didn't even plan this, by the way. As you can see, I just speak off the cuff. I said California, then I put up a California. I said TikTok, and the next slide is TikTok. Totally unplanned. So the TikTok ban lawsuit, you might have heard, if you've been paying attention to the news about this, earlier last year, towards the beginning of last year, Congress passed a bill, and it was signed into law by Biden, to ban TikTok by January 19th. It's supposed to happen, just a few days. Okay, to either they have to sell, ByteDance has to sell to a different company that's not a Chinese company, or they have to, or it'll just be banned. You won't be able to get on TikTok in the United States. Now, I'm not saying I love TikTok or I love everything on there. Haven't really spent a lot of time on there. We do have a page on there, a channel, whatever you call it. But that's not the point. Whether everything is good on there, everything is bad, whether there's some good stuff, some bad stuff, it's really not the point. The point is, this is an egregious violation of the First Amendment, again, the free speech clause, because what they're trying to do, what Congress and the president are trying to do, is to tell the American people that they cannot speak in this forum, this very public forum that has many, many millions or maybe even billions of users by now. Okay? Free speech is not free speech when it's restricted that way. What Elon Musk did recently on X, Twitter, formerly Twitter, you may have heard about that whole thing with the H-1B visas and banning people like Laura Loomer. And he said that his policy at X is freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. That's not free speech. That's not free speech. Because if you don't have freedom of reach, you don't have free speech. I talked about this a little bit in a Substack that I wrote recently. If you want to subscribe to our Substack, it's called Free the Law. I write it, try to publish something at least once a week. But I wrote an article a couple weeks ago called There is no freedom of speech without freedom of reach. Because think about it, if the government told you you were only allowed to speak in deserted places, is that free speech? No. You know what that's called? That's called prison. You can speak as much as you want, but nobody's going to hear you. That's a prison cell, right? And so we filed a lawsuit with our co-plaintiff. Bobby joined us actually as a co-plaintiff in this litigation, and also Kristen Megan Kelly, who's done a lot of work for us, is a co-plaintiff as well, and she's an influencer, but more than that. You may have heard of her. She's a mask specialist out of Michigan, an OSHA industrial hygienist, and an expert in environmental disasters as well. And so she has a very large platform as well. And so she joined us as a co-plaintiff, and we sued the Attorney General Merrick Garland, who won't be the Attorney General for much longer. So that's still ongoing. But the Supreme Court is hearing arguments in that, and not our lawsuit, but there was another lawsuit that TikTok itself filed. And so that one is being brought before them. Our lawsuit is waiting in the wings to see how that one comes out. We have another lawsuit. This now back to health freedom. So the last things I told you about weren't even, we started out talking about vaccines and mandates and health freedom, but the last two things I talked about weren't even about that, which again underscores the breadth of what we cover here at We the Patriots USA. We do a lot of different work. But back to vaccine mandates. Connecticut is now one of only 4 states in the nation that does not allow religious exemptions or philosophical exemptions to vaccinations required for school. The other 3 are California, New York, and Maine. It used to be West Virginia and Mississippi, but Mississippi, due to a court case, won theirs back, and West Virginia never had one either. Actually, Mississippi never had one to begin with either, but because of that court case, I shouldn't say won it back. They have one. But just, I think 2 days ago, the governor in West Virginia signed a bill allowing now religious exemptions in the state of West Virginia. So they had never had a religious exemption. So Connecticut is one of now only 4 states that does not allow religious exemptions. Well, that bill was repealed. I was very active along with Don in fighting that repeal bill. It happened in 2021 because Connecticut had a religious exemption. Idaho has one of the best, if not the best, laws in the country to protect religious exemptions. The language in the statute in Idaho is you can object on religious or any other grounds. So you don't even have to have a religious belief. You can just object. Okay? Yes. That's one of the reasons I'm here, folks, because I left the state after battling at the legislature for several years against House Speaker Matt Ritter and his cronies who were pushing the repeal of the religious exemption for about 5 years before they actually accomplished it in 2021. We battled. We had Bobby, Del Bigtree, everyone come out. We had rallies, 7,000 people at the Capitol. Finally, though, they were successful. I mean, it's a supermajority Democratic legislature there. It's like 3 or 4 to 1, Democrat to Republican. So you really don't have a shot. I mean, we still did it. We still exercised our First Amendment right? We went out there. We got thousands of people. We flew in speakers from all over the country. But ultimately, they were successful in repealing it. Well, not last year, but the year before. That's how long this has been going on. I'm losing track of the years because now we're in 25. The state came into Milford Christian Church's preschool and daycare, which is Little Eagles Preschool and Daycare, and told this Christian church that they could not have families, parents in their daycare and preschool using religious exemptions because the law had been repealed in 2021. Well, Pastor Jim Loomer said to the state, no, we're a church. You're not going to tell us we're not going to honor religious beliefs of our parishioners, of our families here. And so we're going to continue doing it. So they said, well, you have a choice. You can either kick out all the unvaccinated students, expel them, force them all to be vaccinated, or if that's not done within the next 10 days, we're shutting you down. But the state will shut you down. Well, we went in. They called us. We said, not so fast. We filed a federal lawsuit. To this day, since March of 23, when this happened, they are still open. And we are still litigating that. Litigation is slow business, okay? It's still working its way through the courts. We did just recently file a reply to their motion to dismiss, so we are going to have a hearing on that. But we're confident this is going to move forward because this case is a direct attack of the state against the religious institutions. So you talk about church versus state. This is a direct attack on a church, saying you're not allowed to honor these religious beliefs. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm confident that if this one gets, if whether we're successful or not, if it gets appealed to the level of the Supreme Court, that they would take this one up. Because this particular Supreme Court in recent years has shown a strong favor towards religious liberty and has been very unfavorable to states that try to directly attack or are directly hostile to religious freedom. You're talking about a Masterpiece Cake Shop with the cake owner that wouldn't bake the cake for a gay wedding. So that decision. You're talking about the decision out of Maine, where Maine tried to pass a bill allowing school choice and provided vouchers, but only for secular private schools, not for Christian schools, not for religious schools. And the Supreme Court said you can't do that, struck that down. So those are some recent cases where they've shown a strong favor. So those are some of our plaintiffs standing on the steps, along with our attorney there. And so we're very excited about this lawsuit. Second Amendment stuff, I told you we did that as well. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but we won a temporary restraining order against the New Mexico governor. She is something else. She's right up there with Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom. I mean, she's in that club. All right. And she tried to pass a public carry ban in the state of New Mexico, one of the most dangerous cities in the United States right now, because of all of the people that have come to this country illegally that have committed crimes and have been just let loose on the streets because they won't prosecute them, or they just arrest them and let them right back out. It's a very dangerous city. So Dennis Smith, our plaintiff, said, no, I'm still going to carry. I'm carrying my 9mm or whatever I want to carry when I go to the park with my grandchildren or when I go anywhere in public in Albuquerque. I'm going to keep carrying. And so we filed a lawsuit. We won the temporary restraining order against us. That made national news. The lawsuit, however, is ongoing now. So we went up to the 10th Circuit on I won't get into all the details of it, but we went up to the 10th Circuit on the preliminary injunction, which would have kept this restraining order in place throughout the whole litigation. Unfortunately, we're not successful on that, but it is going to be litigated now. It will go to a trial now. We also have two lawsuits out of Connecticut. One is against A.G. Merrick Garland on behalf of a combat veteran banned from carrying in post offices like everyone is, and against the Connecticut governor for the open carry ban. So Connecticut, the hits just keep coming. They repealed the religious exemption in 2023. Now we're not going to let people carry guns in public anymore. They had always allowed open carry, but nope, not anymore. So they're just one by one, just whittling away at the rights. But it doesn't just happen in Connecticut. Unfortunately, it's not just happening in California, in Connecticut, and New York. It's happening in places like Missouri, too, which isn't that unlike. The makeup of the legislature there is not that different than the state of Idaho, okay? And yet, something really bad happened in Missouri. Paul and Amanda Guidry, parents of 4 minor children, including their youngest, a 6-year-old boy with autism, who's nonverbal. And they began using a treatment known as chlorine dioxide to treat using a very strict protocol. So it's not drinking bleach, like they tried to accuse President Trump of saying during COVID. It's not what this was. Very diluted, only like a drop or two in a big glass of water. They were using this protocol with great success. They were seeing great success with his motor skills, with his limited ability to communicate was improving. No adverse health outcomes. He went to the doctor. All of his blood work was great. No evidence of any abuse here. And yet, the state of Missouri, because they got one pediatrician to write a letter saying that alternative treatment was dangerous, took this child and the 3 other minor children out of the home and put them in foster care. No evidence of abuse. That's medical kidnapping. That's what that's called. And so this child was so scared. That's the little boy there with autism. He can't communicate. He can't tell anyone. He's so frightened. He starts acting out. The foster parents can't deal with him. They put him to another foster home. They can't deal with him. Put him to another. He went to 4 different foster homes in the 6 weeks that he was in foster care. We got him home in 6 weeks. And all 4 children we got home in 6 weeks. Should have brought water. Now that's lightning speed. Thank you. That's lightning speed. Because ordinarily, when CPS comes and takes your kids, you don't get them back in 6 weeks. All right? You might not get them back ever. It might be 6 months. It might be 6 years. Okay? The fact that our lawyers stepped in, we have great local counsel we're working with on the ground there. Christine Schultz and Melinda Clark-Sand, amazing attorneys who have worked and advocated for them. This case is not over, though. Yes, we got them back home in 6 weeks. But now we have to fight to remove their names from the child abuse registry because they are listed as child abusers in the state registry, even though they were never convicted of any or even arrested for child abuse or neglect. They're on the registry now. And guess what? Once something's online, it doesn't go away. So now their reputation is tarnished for the rest of their lives. We're suing the state of Missouri for damages, major damages. We are also filing an action to get them removed from the child abuse registry. So pray for them, and you can find out more about this and all of our cases at wethepatriotsusa.org. But there's even more. Yes, it's not just in states like Missouri. And by the way, someone from Ohio, which is another state that's supposedly went for Trump, that's supposed to lean red. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It isn't all for freedom. I had an even worse medical kidnapping case, or just as, maybe not even worse, but just as horrendous, out of Ohio. Somebody called me recently, and we haven't officially taken the case, so I can't release names. But this woman called me. Her newborn was stolen from her by the state just because she wanted to breastfeed instead of formula feed. Because the doctor said, this child isn't gaining enough weight. You have to supplement with this formula. She said she didn't show up to the next appointment. She got a new doctor. She still was under the care of another physician who happens to actually be a friend of mine. That's how I got in touch with her. Who's more, she's an MD, a pediatrician, but she's more, natural, holistic minded, and would not force feed a child formula. Found other ways to help her and support her in her breastfeeding. So she was under the care of another physician. But because this physician is so arrogant, these SOBs, I'm sorry, they're so arrogant, he called in CPS and filed a report of child abuse, child neglect, said she was starving the child because she didn't show up to his appointment. How dare you not show up to my appointment? I'm going to report you. Well, they grabbed the baby right out of her arms from her home. She said at that point, I'll feed the formula. I don't care. Okay, I'll do it. Because you'll say anything. As a mother, mothers here know, your baby's being taken away. You'll just say anything at that point. And so she said, okay, I'll give the formula. They said, nope, too late for that. Took the baby away. Now, luckily, she was successful in getting the baby placed with grandparents, with her parents. But she still has limited visitation. She can't be with the baby all the time. Now, that is absolutely a crime, in my opinion. I mean, these people, we shouldn't just be filing civil suits. We should be able to bring criminal charges. Unfortunately, the way the law works, I'm not the DA, prosecutor, grand jury. Those are the people that have to, bring the charges and indictments. But we can certainly sue their pants off in every other way, and we will. Anyway, Idaho, getting back to Idaho, there was a case where a mother had her 2-year-old child kicked out of a daycare, New Horizons Daycare in Meridian, right here locally, because she claimed a religious exemption. Now, that's not supposed to happen in Idaho. What did I just say a few minutes ago with the law in Idaho? I said we have one of the best laws, if not the best, for vaccine exemptions in the country, because you can claim an exemption in a school or a daycare on religious or any other grounds. That's what the statute says. But apparently, New Horizons, a company based out of Minnesota, draw your conclusion. They're a conglomerate. They own daycares all over the place, and they're from Minnesota. And they think that Minnesota law should apply. They don't have to obey Idaho law. Well, if you do business here, you're subject to the laws of the state. That's how it's supposed to work, but apparently not for them. So, unfortunately, Ada County District Court did not rule in our favor on that. They agreed with the daycare. Well, whether that surprises you or not, we filed an appeal to the Idaho Supreme Court. So that's where we are now. We haven't been docketed yet. I keep checking. In fact, I get the Advocate's a legal publication for lawyers where they actually print it there. So every month I can check, but we would get the updates anyway. But it still wasn't in there the other day when I saw it. So it hasn't been docketed for a hearing yet, but we should have a hearing on that soon, and hopefully we'll be victorious there. Because to me, that's absolutely absurd that religious exemptions, that you're allowed. What's the point of even having the law then? If it's not going to be enforced and individual businesses can just choose to not abide by it, then why do we have laws? I didn't say it. You said it, okay? So we have some big things still to do. We have a lot of work ahead of us, all right? Just because, again, everybody's celebrating. I want to just talk for a moment about this. Everybody's celebrating because President Trump is going to be inaugurated next Monday. I get it, all right? A lot of people are very, very hopeful, but some people are a little too hopeful. I have people that are talking to me that it's almost like they're talking about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. They're saying he's going to save us, like he's our Savior. No. There's only one Savior. My business partner, Dawn, is not here today. I stopped over her house yesterday. She's got a flag outside that says, Trump is my president, Jesus is my Savior, right? Now, again, that's her own personal political opinions. We're not a political organization, but my point is, he can only do so much. Even if he were 100% with us on every single issue, pro-freedom, and is going to do everything that we always dreamed of and more. He's limited in power because that's how the founders of this nation set it up. He's not a king. He cannot do things unilaterally, just like the legislature here in this building and the governor in this building cannot just unilaterally sign things and pass things into law and just have full authority. There's the court, right? The court is the check and balance on this. So we still need to fight these battles, folks. So we have a lot of work ahead of us with hiring more legal staff. Right now, I told you I was going to tell you how we pay for everything. Well, it's all through public donations. I can't really talk specifically too much about money here because there's laws about that. We're in the state capitol building. But that's how we get our support. So I encourage everyone, you can find out information about that on our website or in the flyer that was in the folders back there, and you can read that for yourself. Go on our website if you'd like to support our work. I really hope you do. Unfortunately, because of this horrible state of the economy the last year or two, which I believe was orchestrated. I don't believe that happened by accident. I believe that was planned. Unfortunately, donations are way down, and not just to us, to all nonprofits. Because when you can't even afford to put food on your table or gas in your tank, probably the last thing you're thinking about is donating to charity. And I get it, but the problem becomes if we're not around to fight these battles, then what are you going to do when you need help? Because we can't just wait to get funding until there's a crisis, until there's another public health emergency or something, or until the Gestapo is kicking in your door. You can't suddenly call up and say, okay, now I'll give you money, I'll donate. No, we won't be around. Like, we need funding to carry on our operations in the meantime and to build a reserve so we already have the money. Because I have lawyers, that's not a problem. I have lawyers all over the country I can talk to. I can find a lawyer in any 50 states today if you have a lawsuit from me in any one of the 50 states, even Alaska. Yes, I have contacts there, and Hawaii. We almost had a case in Hawaii, as a matter of fact, not too long ago. Any one of the 50 states, I can get you a lawyer. That's not a problem. A medical freedom, constitutional law lawyer, not a problem. I can find that in all 50 states. Plaintiffs, not a problem. Probably some of you will reach out with a legal question or need legal help. Everywhere I go and speak, people are coming to me, I want to file a lawsuit. Tons of plaintiffs, tons of lawyers, not a problem. The only thing I don't have is money. That's the biggest thing. Because once I have that, all the other problems are solved. So we need to hire more attorneys to work in-house. Right now, I'm the only one. So we need at least 2 more to work in-house and file these lawsuits so we don't have to contract out, because that makes the litigation expenses even that much more. When you don't have people in-house to do the work, and you're constantly paying outside counsel, that's a lot more expensive. It's not as efficient. That's not as cost efficient as having in-house attorneys. We want to file more lawsuits in the realm of medical freedom, but also parental rights, like the Morella Ramirez case. This is a scourge on our nation, folks. This transgenderism, this indoctrination in our public schools, the LGBTQI, whatever you want to call it, agenda, and then the DEI stuff, critical race theory, all of that, that needs to go. We need to have more parents standing up. And listen, it happens even in Idaho. 2 years ago, almost to this day, I stood up in front of the Caldwell school board, okay, where I reside, and talked to them and spoke out against the policy they were trying to enact, which was, again, allowing students to use the locker room and restroom of their choice. No. Okay, and preferred pronouns and all of that stuff. Luckily, the Idaho legislature stepped in and stopped that, and they dropped that. But it was happening even here. And you see the things they have in the library? I can't even I brought my daughter, who's 10 now, but this was like a year ago or something. I brought her to the library, she's looking for books about, whatever, animals. And they're, baby animals and all this. And then, like, 2 shelves up on the same wall was basically what I would consider cartoon pornography. Was right there, teaching about my body and, queer and all this other stuff. I said, no. I said, I was going to make a scene, but I had my daughter. So I did not steal it. Okay, I was being recorded. I didn't steal anything. But I did. I will admit that I took the books and moved them to a very different section of the library, right next to the latest Mark Levin book. And another book saying some not so nice things about Hillary Clinton. And I put it right between there. So I admit to that. I moved the books in the library. Come get me. All right. But I did that because whoever one of you was going to find something like that, it wasn't going to end very well, was it? All right. I said, I'm in Idaho now. They're not going to take too kindly to this. Well, guess what? Next time I went to the library, they still weren't there. So these are the little things we can do to fight back, though, right? I'm not destroying property. I didn't steal anything. I didn't make a big scene and start swearing. I wanted to. There's things I wanted to say, but I didn't do that. Because you can do it peacefully. There's other ways you can fight back peacefully. And I went to the school board and protested it. These are things you can do, okay? And I'll file lawsuits because I told them that, if you allow this to pass, we've already talked to parents in this town, and we're going to be filing a lawsuit against you. I made it very clear to the school board that's what we were going to do. So increased educational opportunities, too. So we don't just do lawsuits. We're a law firm, yes, but we're unique in that we're also a nonprofit. So we focus on education. What I'm doing today is part of fulfilling the education arm of our organization. presentations like this. We show our film, Shot Dead, which we produced in 2023, that profiles the stories of 3 families that lost children very tragically to the COVID shot. Children, there are a lot more than 3 that died, but we just focused in on 3 families because we wanted to do an in-depth look and just show the heartache. The point of the film wasn't necessarily to show how many people are being affected, although we do show statistics. We have Dr. McCullough, Dr. Thorpe, we have other people on in the film talking about statistics. But we wanted the heart of the film to focus on how this affects families, what these families had to live through, showing them crying at their child's graveside, showing Taylor Martin, the mother of 18-year-old Tristan Martin, who died shortly after taking the COVID shot, showing her going into her room and going through her daughter's, keepsakes and stuffed animals and things like that, and having to show all of her hopes and dreams and what was on her bucket list and things she didn't get to accomplish because of big pharma and the government and the lies of the mainstream media. So that you can watch that for free at shotdead.org if you haven't seen it. But we did a screening here in this building last year. We also did a screening back in October. Some of you might have been there out in Ketchum with Dr. Cole. He came, and we and also Leslie Mnookin from Health Freedom Defense Fund, who's a friend of ours. We work closely with her as well. We believe in partnering with other organizations. We don't believe in just doing everything in a silo. Unfortunately, there's too many nonprofits and organizations out there that they're out for themselves. They're just, I don't want to say they're doing it for the wrong reasons, but they're too focused. They have tunnel vision, and they operate in silos. And we're not going to win anything that way. We're not going to win anything that way. That's why I'm here in conjunction with Idaho Freedom Foundation, okay? Because I'm not going to speak for them and say they support everything we do, but we align on a lot of things, okay? So we can get in a room together and we can maybe work on some initiatives together. They do some very different things with regard to, advancing policy initiatives, legislative guides, political election stuff that we don't get involved in. And then we do some things like a lot of litigation and lawsuits that they don't do. We can complement each other by working together, all right? And that's what we want to do. Is we work with Leslie, even though she does have a legal defense firm and does very much so the same kind of work that we do. But we don't see each other as competitors because we're small compared to the opposition. The opposition is funded by people like Bill Gates, George Soros, Jeff Bezos. I mean, the list goes on and on. The U.S. government funds them, right? Literally, the U.S. government funds them, and they have unlimited money. So here we are. Do you think we've ever gotten a grant from the U.S. government? They're the defendant usually in our lawsuit. The defendant isn't usually going to give you money, right? We're suing people like Merrick Garland or Joseph Biden. I don't think they're going to be writing grants for us, for We the Patriots. So we've never gotten a government grant. You know how much Planned Parenthood gets every year in government grants, or the ACLU? I mean, you're talking about untold millions. I don't even know what the most recent figures are, but millions and millions of dollars. When you look at the annual budget, last time I looked at Planned Parenthood, it was like $378 million a year or something. I mean, ridiculous. The ACLU, their litigation, who, by the way, once in a great while, they'll throw us a bone and file something that's pro-freedom, but like 90%, 95% of their lawsuits are not things that we would support. Their litigation budget alone is $100 million. That's not the organization budget, just for lawsuits, $100 million. We don't even have $1 million in our budget. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about numbers, but it is amazing the amount of work that we've done with a very, very small amount of money. So I always say to people, hey, if we ever got real money, maybe not that kind of money, because that'll never happen, but if we actually got some real money behind us, imagine what we could do. It's the possibilities are endless. I'm just going to end it right there because I know it's an hour event, but I don't really have too much more to say, and I don't want to just talk for the sake of talking, but I want to give you a chance. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I do just have to give the caveat that obviously I can't give legal advice here on the spot because I don't personally represent you, but if you want to talk to me privately and set up a call, we can have a call or something. I personally make pretty much all of the calls for potential lawsuits and plaintiffs because I'm the only in-house attorney. We do have some of our outside counsel make some of the calls sometimes, but honestly, most of the time when you write in, you email us at info@wethepatriotsusa.org, or Don or Brian at wethepatriotsusa.org. You can email us directly. My business card is in that folder. If you did pick up a folder, there's also a free pen in it. So if you didn't get it, it's there for the taking. I will respond to you directly, though. If you email me, whether you use the general email address or my personal one, I will actually respond to you personally. I'll call you. I'll spend time on the phone. It's all free. Again, it's all pro bono, but we just rely on the support of our donors. So, like I said, I don't have anything else to say, but I'll take questions at this time.
This is not exactly on the point we talked about, but it's kind of a big thing these days. How can hordes of people here against the law have standing, their own standing ability to invalidate the laws passed by representatives and citizens?
So you raise a good point, because generalized taxpayer standing is not considered legitimate in the United States of America. The Supreme Court has said repeatedly that there's no such thing as just, oh, I'm a taxpayer, therefore I can challenge any law. And I mean, I get it. Well, let me just explain. The reasoning behind it is anytime a law is passed, right? Regardless of the issue, forget about the issue. Any issue you can think of. It could be the most mundane, like environmental regulation, or SEC regulation or something. It could be something that only affects a very small percentage of people, and yet there'll be a large number of people in favor of it, and there'll be maybe not an equally large, but at least a decent number of people opposed to it. You're always going to have plenty of people on either side of any law that's passed. So if they allow generalized standing, then there would be people literally challenging every single law. And the courts can't even handle the lawsuits they have now. Why do you think our lawsuits are still going on 2, 3, 4 years later? That shouldn't be happening. Lawsuits should be resolved within a year, right? Within 6 months even. That's how I would like to see it. But they can't even handle the caseloads they have now because there aren't enough judges. If you start having it just open season, anyone can file a lawsuit, even if you weren't personally affected by it, even if nobody personally harmed you, simply you disagree with it, you file a lawsuit. No, there's no standing. However, let me answer your question, because you asked, how can hordes of people fight back? What can we do? And I do have an answer. I have an answer for you. We need to find the people that are affected, and that's what we do here at We the Patriots USA. So one of the things that we'd like to start doing in the new year as well is filing more of the Title IX lawsuits, more of the lawsuits in favor of female athletes who aren't being allowed to really compete in female sports anymore, in women's sports, because now they're letting all these men in. And so we want to file more of those lawsuits in conjunction with people like Riley Gaines, who, like I said, is being supportive now, now that she knows who we are, is supportive of our efforts. We like to do that more. Am I a female college athlete? No. I have no standing to sue. We, the Patriots, wouldn't have standing to sue as an organization. However, if one of these people is a member of our organization, or they want us to represent them, they can call us and we can file a lawsuit on their behalf. So let's say you disagree with the law, but it doesn't personally affect you. Let's say you disagree with a law allowing men and women's sports. Well, you're not a female college athlete, but you want to challenge that. You don't believe that's right. We find someone who is personally affected and we file a lawsuit on their behalf. And that's how we challenge these laws, is we find someone who is personally injured by it, because that's what's required. You need what's called a legally cognizable injury, meaning you've suffered some actual personal direct harm to yourself from this, not just, well, my taxes are going to support it and I don't support it, because that's everybody in the entire United States who doesn't support it. You could have literally 100 million people file a lawsuit then, if that were the case. We need someone who directly is affected by that particular issue. But the good news is that's easy for us to find. We can put things out on our social media pages. We have contacts we can call, all at different organizations around the country that know people that are harmed by these laws. We can find a plaintiff. Like I said at the beginning, finding plaintiffs is easy. That's not my problem. Finding plaintiffs, we've never had a lawsuit dismissed for lack of standing.
Obviously, miscommunicated. So President Trump had his lawsuits about the election in 2020 thrown out as a lack of standing, and he was indeed injured by it. And here you have people that it seems to me should not have standing.
Who's the people that shouldn't have standing?
People who came here uninvited.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not supposed to speak on political things and election things because we're nonpartisan, but I can talk to you privately. But what I will say is, I'm not saying I never stood up here and said that I agree with those decisions, because there are a lot of people, a lot of legal scholars, even well-respected ones, who will tell you that he absolutely did have standing. So that's more of an issue of the individual judge or court. That doesn't mean, just because it was thrown out for lack of standing doesn't mean he didn't have standing. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that without naming any judges or anything like that and get myself in trouble. Yes. They can't. It's possible because the people allow it. By people, I don't just mean you. I don't mean people sitting in this room necessarily. I mean everyone involved allowed it. The police officers who were carrying out those orders allowed it. They should have refused. All right? It's an unconstitutional order. If you are given an unconstitutional order, you have taken an oath to uphold and defend and enforce the laws, right? Including the Constitution. As a police officer, as a veteran, you take an oath as well, right? And thank you for your service, and everyone else here who served. But you take, Don, by the way, is a U.S. Navy veteran as well. And you, sir, I recognize you as well. And so, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution. Well, if you're giving an unconstitutional order and then you carry it out, you're violating your oath. You should lose your job at the very least, if not be arrested yourself, in my opinion. Now, again, I'm not speaking about any particular circumstance, but if there is an unconstitutional order, you are not supposed to carry it out. There's a peaceful way to protest that, even if it means losing your job. And then we'll represent you in court. That's why we exist, is so that if you do get arrested or if you do lose your job at the very least, we will defend you because we believe that's unconstitutional. No, businesses, they had no right to tell businesses to do that, especially people who claim religious exemptions to it or medical exemptions, because there was no evidence whatsoever that there was going to be any kind of actual threat to the people in those businesses. They were never able to show a direct threat of harm, except by using the CDC's talking points or the mainstream media's talking points. If they used those, then they had evidence. Oh, well, a doctor on TV said it. Well, did they show you any study or any scientific evidence? Oh, no, but they said it, therefore it's true. And this is what I call the problem of accepting the authority of the person over the authority of the evidence. And that's happened far too often. I've been talking about it for years. It's happened in health freedom for many, many years. You have someone like Dr. Paul Offit from CHOP in Philadelphia, or you'll have, what's his name? The other one down in Texas, who's the pro-vax guy, who just gets on something. He'll just get up there in front of a microphone or in front of a TV camera and just say it. But the reporter, you notice, never, ever, ever, Peter Hotez is the one I was thinking about. The reporter will never ask him, well, wait a second, where's the studies that show that vaccines are safe or effective and they don't cause autism? Where's the studies that show that injuries are rare, 1 in a million? Do you have any studies to show me that? They don't even ask the question because they know he can't answer it. So just like a good lawyer will never ask a question he doesn't know the answer to, or he doesn't want the answer said, when you put someone on the stand, you don't ask a question if you don't want to hear the answer. So reporters do the same thing. They purposely just won't ask a question. Nobody ever seems to notice that, though, except maybe people like us. But so many people just watch the mainstream media. Oh, this great doctor who's like well-credentialed, has all these years of experience. He said it. Therefore, it's true. We don't need any scientific evidence, anything. I think she was first, and then I'll get to you. Well, it's hard for me to answer a question like that, again, without getting myself in trouble. Believe it or not, now you're going to think, I could argue this is a free speech violation. But believe it or not, there are ethical rules that actually prohibit attorneys from criticizing judges or certain court decisions. We can actually get in trouble for it. I don't personally agree with that. I think it's a First Amendment violation. There is no the licensing, the bar is an arm of the government, right? They license attorneys, so the government is telling you can't say certain things. Now, inside the courtroom, there's decorum, and you can't have contempt of court, of course. But outside the courtroom, speaking to the media or at a public event, I should be able to say whatever I want. However, to try to walk the line so I don't get in trouble, I haven't actually been here long enough to have observed to give a fully informed opinion. I've obviously seen decisions come out in the last couple of years. If you want to give my opinion, just the last couple of years, I haven't been watching long enough. Obviously there's still work to be done, or AG Labrador wouldn't have much to do, right? He finds himself in the courts of the state and of the District Court of Idaho quite frequently, right? His office does, because there's a lot of work to be done here. So obviously, maybe that's a better question for him, because he's done a lot more litigating specifically in Idaho. We are a nationwide organization, so although we do have, I told you about that lawsuit in Idaho, we haven't done a ton of litigation specifically here. However, obviously, since we're here now, I would like to do a lot more, and I am licensed, by the way, in the state of Idaho, as well as Connecticut, where I came from. I'd like to do a lot more, but we just haven't gotten to the point where there's been, I guess, the good news is there hasn't been as great of a need, although we do sometimes, like we saw with the daycare case, there hasn't been as great of a need for litigation here as I had in Connecticut or in states like California. So that's a good thing. Yes. All right. And then you can talk to me privately after if you'd like, because they do have to kick us out at 1. I wish we had more time, because I have a lot of things to say about HIPAA. But first of all, there's no private right of action with HIPAA, believe it or not. So that means an individual citizen, even if they have their HIPAA rights violated, cannot bring a lawsuit against a hospital, a doctor, anything like that. The Department of Health and Human Services can. The U.S. government, the Attorney Generals of the United States, for instance, the Justice Department could file something against a hospital for violating, or an insurance company. They can do that, but there's actually no private right of action. What I will say, however, the state of Connecticut, per Connecticut law, which you probably don't agree with, like I don't probably agree with, does have the right, the Office of Early Childhood, which oversees daycares and preschools, does have the right to inspect the records of the children. And so they went in there and asked for the records. And they saw that there not only were no vaccination records, but there are all these exemption forms saying I claim a religious exemption. They said, well, that law was repealed 2021. You can't do this. And that's where it started. So the state law actually gives them authority to do that. Now, a daycare would not necessarily be covered under HIPAA. There's also FERPA, which applies to schools. So a preschool might be covered under that, which is the Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So there's different laws here. HIPAA usually applies to doctors, insurance companies, hospitals, clinics, medical professionals, and health insurance companies. Cannot release information to third parties without consent. Doesn't necessarily apply to other kinds of businesses. So if you own a bait and tackle shop, you find out some health information about your customers, you technically could release it. It wouldn't be a HIPAA violation, because you're not a covered entity under HIPAA. There's a list of businesses that are covered entities. Like I said, doctors' offices, hospitals, insurance companies. But bait and tackle shop, a paint store, whatever, wouldn't be covered. You could go around blabbing health information. Now, that person could try to privately sue you under a different law, a different privacy law, but not specifically HIPAA. So anyway, I'll be out in the hall. If you want to ask a few more questions, I'd be happy to talk to you. You can find out more about us at wethepatriotsusa.org. Again, there's our website and a QR code on the flyer in those folders in the back if you didn't get one. But other than that, thank you so much for coming, and thank you once again to the Idaho Freedom Foundation for hosting us. Thanks. That's that, and that's that. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Capital Clarity. Thank you again for Brian. Please give it up again for him. organizations like We the Patriots USA are doing their best to protect civil liberties and our God-given rights. So please ask them as many questions as possible. But be sure to make next week's Capitol Clarity next Thursday at noon here in Lincoln Auditorium, where we'll be hearing from Senators Zito and Glenita Zoiderveld. Talk about something that's a long time coming, the grocery tax repeal. So, yes. So, I will see you next week.